vostra storia, nella vostra compagnia e nel tuo percorso, nella tua vita in Scozia, come è arrivato questo autore e perché in questo momento hai deciso di frequentarlo?
How was the decision to make a piece of I can say
Mrożek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you decided and why, as a Scotsman, are deciding for a piece like this?
Well, the answer is simple because a friend of mine gave me the plays
La risposta è facile, un amico mi ha dato da leggere
and told me that I'd enjoyed them
e che gli è piaciuto molto,
because I think he knew that I was interested in the so-called theatre of the absurd was really a big deal for me when I was young.
e probabilmente ha pensato che, dato che da giovane mi piaceva molto il teatro surreale, che fosse qualcosa che mi interessava.
And that kind of movement writing in the 50s and 60s, like people like Ionesco and Arthur Adamov.
E questo tipo di scrittura degli anni 50 di questi autori.
And this was in that kind of that genre, if you like.
Ed era un po' in questo genere, era in questo discorso, diciamo.
But I read the plays and enjoyed them, but then I put them on my shelf because I thought, well, I'll never get the opportunity to direct them.
E li ho letti, però li ho messi da parte, pensando che mai avrei potuto metterli in scena.
But then, very simply, there's a chap called Dominic Hill, who's the artistic director of the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow.
Ma poi Dominic
Hill.
Yeah. Che è il direttore artistico a Glasgow.
And he wanted to produce a season of plays.
Produrre una stagione di pezzi, di pièce.
That would take place in a very small studio theatre.
Che avrebbero avuto luogo in un piccolo studio, in una piccola camera.
And it was very interesting to me because he made some really strict rules.
Era molto interessante perché ci ha dato delle regole molto ferree.
There was no money.
Niente soldi.
There was no budget.
Nessun budget.
The only lights that we could use were the lights that were already in the theatre.
La luce era quella che avevamo già nel teatro, l'unica che potevamo usare.
The only costumes and props that we could use were what we could find in the theatre's
Così
store.
come i costumi e i requisiti.
And the only money was to pay the actors.
E l'unico soldi che avevamo era per pagare gli attori.
So I agreed that my fee would be covered by my company's salary, so they didn't pay me either.
Così, bene o male, anch'io non ho ricevuto i soldi, ma l'ha ricevuto la mia compagnia.
But for me it was really interesting because in the last sort of 10 years, a lot of our work with my company, Vanishing Point, has been quite big and quite technical, and we've had quite a lot of money and lots of light and sound and video and all of this stuff.
Era qualcosa di particolare perché negli ultimi 10 anni con la mia compagnia Vanishing Point avevamo sempre dei budget pazzeschi e un sacco di cose che si potevano usare.
And I really like the idea of having just kind of going back to when I was a student, really.
E mi piace l'idea di poter andare indietro come ai tempi quando ero studente.
And I remembered these two plays.
E mi ricordo di queste due pièce.
And I just thought that they would really give themselves to that kind of simple staging.
Che sarebbero state ideali per questo tipo di semplicità.
And I liked it because it reminded me of the kind of, you know, Lars von Trier, the filmmaker, when he had his like dogma rules.
E mi ricorda un po', non so se conoscete, se sapete, se vi ricordate di Lars von Trier con i suoi 10 dogmi.
And he couldn't, you know, they couldn't use any. They had to use natural light, and they weren't allowed to use any post-production in sound and things like that. So it reminded me of that. So I thought it would be quite a cool thing to do.
Mi ha ricordato un po' queste regole, appunto, senza post-produzione, senza effetti speciali, tutto molto semplice.
And so, yeah, I thought of these two plays, and it was really nice because with my work with my company, the work's created by me, so I'm kind of the author of that work.
E così appunto prima scenato come Vanishing Point, e sono diventato come l'autore proprio di questi due pezzi.
Whereas with these plays, I'm not the author.
Beg your pardon?
With these plays, I'm not the author.
Che però io non sono l'autore di
So
questi
it
due
was
pezzi.
kind of quite low pressure, and an enjoyable environment to be in.
C'era molta pressione, però anche comunque un piacere a fare questo pezzo.
Yeah, and I really loved being like, hello. It's this intimate group.
Yes, there's as much of us as there is of them.
Yeah.
Buonasera.
Well, don't start showing off. Yeah, and it was great. Yeah, we all went. All of us, all of these guys who did it, Robbie and Peter and Sam,
Tutti loro
were all in the first production, which was 2 years ago.
erano già nella prima produzione che
And
era anni fa.
all of us, even Peter, who's a distinguished actor, who's worked with all the stars.
Anche Peter, che è un attore insomma, affermato, che ha lavorato con gente
We
famosa.
were all rummaging around like children in the costume department, trying to find, what about this? What about this?
Eravamo tutti talmente eccitati, anche appunto a trovare i costumi, cosa sarebbe questo.
And I threw myself into it as well. So even in the interval here, I was on my hands and knees during the chalk around the floor.
Anche qua, infatti, il mare, cioè questo contorno, l'ho fatto io.
No, I don't have a big ego, but that's not something that I'd normally do.
No, non sono una persona che ha un grande ego, però sicuramente queste cose non le faccio.
Yeah, that's true. So we all enjoyed it, but we never imagined it would be anywhere but the Circle Studio and the Citizens.
Non pensavamo comunque di uscire così con questo pezzo, pensavamo di rimanere da noi, tra noi.
So that's why.
Yes.
That's why.
Thank you. Ma qual è la differenza secondo te di cos'è la mano oggi e cos'era la mano negli anni 50? Questo parlare di libertà oggi, che differenza è parlare di libertà oggi e in Polonia negli anni 50? Perché la società è molto diversa, la società di Mrożek, la nostra società, quindi...
She's asking about the contemporaneity, historically. So, what in the context of the 50s, what was liberty and subject of the hand and thing, and what is it now for you?
Well, I mean, you're all really nice people, but it's very difficult for me. I always hate talking about the work because I think it kind of has to speak for
È
itself.
difficile parlare del lavoro perché dovrebbe parlare per se stesso.
Per tutti voi decidere cosa significa che tu dai. It's to them to decide, it's for them to decide.
Yeah.
Sì, perché mentre parlavamo nell'intervallo,
Yeah.
per me la mano era una cosa, per qualcun altro era una cosa completamente diversa.
For someone,
E questo era molto
something,
interessante.
and for another it was something else.
Well, that's
So-
interesting because that, I think I like the first play better, and I think as a director I understand the first play better.
A me piace sinceramente, personalmente di più il primo pezzo, lo sento più mio.
And that doesn't mean that I understand it better in an intellectual way, but as a director staging a piece of work, sometimes you have an intuitive relationship with how it should be and how you want it to be.
Come regista avevo più facilità a immedesimarmi di come sarebbe dovuto essere, di come erano le emozioni.
And
Mi
I
sentivo più
think you can, directors can be as clever as you like, but unless you find that you intuitively click into the groove of the work, it's very, very difficult to stage a play, I think.
Se c'è questa connessione molto, molto di stomaco, no? che si sente un pezzo istintivamente, è molto più facile ed è molto più...
So I think the first play works for me because the hand can be a different thing for everybody.
E per me, proprio per questo, per il fatto che la mano può essere per qualsiasi cosa, per ognuno qualcosa di diverso, funziona meglio.
And because it's quite visceral, it has a feeling about it. And because it feels that in our staging of it, the audience are in the same place as the characters,
anche con questa intimità dello spettatore che è praticamente parte del pezzo. Poi,
that it kind of it asks questions of them as collaborators and as voyeurs, if you like.
C'è questo battibecco tra collaboratori e voyeur.
Yeah, but the play, I
Tra
think,
gli attori e l'audience.
that the play doesn't demand that I find an answer to it.
Ma non c'è bisogno, non penso che c'è bisogno di trovare una risposta per questo.
But the second play does, I think.
E invece il secondo deve dare una risposta.
So I find the
penso.
second play much harder.
Ed è molto più difficile.
And I'll just say one more thing about it, because I think it's an intellectual play, the second play.
È molto più intellettuale il secondo.
And it also, it was difficult today because the staging of the first play is really clean and right for me.
Ed è difficile oggi perché il primo, a mio avviso, funzionava benissimo.
Whereas with the second
Tutto il
play,
contesto.
because we had to take away seats all over there, because it's normally performed in the round.
Abbiamo dovuto mettere il palco completamente sottosopra della mano.
But because of the surtitles, we have to have it like this, and it affected the play in a very strong way this evening.
E anche appunto tutti questi dettagli, il sottotitoli, insomma, avevo l'impressione che questo prendesse troppo posto poi nella rappresentazione.
What were you going to say, Rob?
No, I was just going to say I think, like you said, the first play has multiple readings. The second play is much more straightforward because they identify what the thing is, which is hunger. And okay, we can each choose what hunger is, but there is not as many ways to read it. And I think, of course, with a piece like that, therefore you just go, okay, they're hungry, right, let's see how they're going to sort this out.
Cioè,
Do you know what I mean?
Un senso di identificazione molto più forte nel secondo, probabilmente per lo spettatore, perché si parla di aver fame. È una cosa basilare, una cosa che non ti lascia poi tanto spazio per altre risposte, cosa che invece nel primo è molto più
It's much more straightforward as a play.
Yeah.
And therefore it's more difficult to read down on as many things as you like. And I missed having people all the way down.
Yeah. And we didn't have time to rehearse because we had some problems today.
E non avevamo tanto tempo per fare delle prove perché avevamo un paio di problemi.
So we didn't have time to rehearse the second play today
E non avevamo tempo
in this
di fare delle prove come volevamo noi del secondo.
So the actors won't mind me saying that it also became very technical in its performance.
È diventato molto tecnico tutto e questo mi dispiace.
Because they were thinking about trying to get their backs away from the audience. They were trying, it was a logistical difficulty tonight for the actors.
Appunto, avendo questa logistica sempre in testa di non dare troppo le spalle al pubblico, insomma, di essere sempre in sintonia comunque.
So tomorrow we'll have some time to work and to understand it a bit better in this.
Domani.
So come again.
Tornate qui.
Volete chiedere qualcosa voi? Avete qualche curiosità? No?
Sì.
Dai.
So we don't really speak Italian, so we only understand English. So actually I didn't understand English.
Parlano francese e Andrea
Oh.
So you three are English speakers.
No,
we speak French.
You're French speakers.
Yeah.
So you didn't know what the hell was going on then?
Yeah, we did.
You did?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. How did you find the Scottish accents?
Oh, really great.
Yeah. Sorry. But
Yeah. Some people find them harder to understand.
It was okay.
there you go. It was at first it was a bit funny, but afterwards it was.
Yeah, we really got used to it.
Oh, cool. Good. So what are you studying? Are you students?
Siete studenti?
we're studying we're studying in the gymnasium. We're drama studying.
Okay.
Yeah,
To be actors or directors or writers?
Everything.
C'è una scuola di... Cos'è? Che scuola? What kind of school it is?
it's like the high school, but
Oh, right.
not really the high school. I don't know how to explain it, but it's
Un liceo di
it's
abitati.
we have like drama lessons and theory of theater lessons. So
Per lavorare con il teatro.
And did you come, now it's I've turned it the other way now.
Yes.
Your post-show discussion. So did you come because you knew the plays, or because you had to, or because...
Perché siete venuti? Perché conoscevate I pezzi o dovevate venire?
we came because it was like a week in Ticino, and we
Perché passavate del tempo qua in Ticino?
yeah,
Capito bene?
and we had our teacher told us there was a show
Yeah.
here, and so we came.
Okay, great.
Vi hanno detto di venire. Dunque siete venuti. Fantastico.
But we didn't know anything about.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it before, but now we saw it and we really liked it.
Which one did you prefer?
The first one.
The first one.
Why?
Ci è piaciuto più?
Firstly,
Perché?
sorry. Firstly, because from my point of view, we just see the back of the actors. So it was a bit
Yes.
difficult. Sorry.
In the second one?
Yeah, for the second one.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a bit less, we had less imagination of what was the anger, like you said before.
Yeah.
Come dicevi tu prima, c'è più spazio per l'immaginazione prima che il secondo.
It was a bit easier to understand the first one.
Ed era più facile da comprendere.
Understand it, the language, or understand...
From both.
Yeah, I think it's easy to. I find it easy to understand the first one. I'm still not sure I completely understand the second.
Anch'io penso che sia più facile il primo, infatti il secondo non sono sicuro di averlo capito fino ad ora.
So for me, the first one was more like you can understand everything even without knowing any English or Italian by reading.
Yeah.
But the second one, there was a lot of dialogue, and you really had to understand, like, when he was talking there about the things. It's not funny if you can't understand anything.
Yeah.
Era più proprio una cosa linguistica proprio nel primo, era più facile da comprendere, invece il secondo era proprio delle parole, era più complesso.
Yeah, they're playing logical tricks on each other, so you have to follow the
Fanno
logic
appunto
of
dei
the argument to
giochetti
try and...
psicologici, no, tra di loro,
Yeah.
e dunque è più difficile, più ovvio.
But there's something I think at the end of the play that's about ideology winning in the end over.
Ma c'è qualcosa che, come l'ideologia che vince su...
Yeah, sort of somehow winning over lies
che
and
vince sulle
manipulation.
bugie e sulla manipolazione.
And it's changed a lot in the 2 years. When we did it 2 years ago, it's a very different production now than it was
Ed era
2
diverso di
years
come
ago.
lo facevamo 2 anni fa, dunque è cambiato.
The first one
nel corso
hasn't
tempo.
changed, but the second one's changed a lot.
Invece il primo non è praticamente è rimasto immutato, invece il secondo abbiamo lavorato molto di più nel cambiamento.
You know, and I don't want to sort of say it's about certain things, but what it makes me think about is kind of what's going on in I think particularly in America, and it's now.
Mi fa pensare a quello che sta attualmente prendendo posto in America, insomma, quello che sta succedendo.
It's almost a cliché now to talk about Donald Trump.
È un po' un cliché parlare di Trump, ma
But you know what I find interesting about Donald Trump is that he doesn't care
quello che è interessante è che Trump non interessa
that everyone knows he's lying,
che lui sta dicendo un sacco di
because
frotte.
what Donald Trump knows
Perché Trump sa
is that the truth is simply the percentage of people who believe it.
che la verità è manipolazione e quanto la gente poi vuole capire.
So he can just tell lies. And all intelligent people are looking at him going, wait a minute, that's not true.
E gente appunto che magari pensa un po' di più, dice, ma
And he just
cosa stai
goes,
dicendo?
he goes, that doesn't matter.
A me non interessa,
Because enough people will believe it.
perché c'è tanta gente che mi crederà.
And I think you sort of see that movement out at sea.
E questo lo vedo un po' in Out at Sea.
Yeah, so this guy who's found this ideological place in his head, but it's not going to do him any good.
Ha trovato questo
Or maybe it will.
nella sua testa facendo queste manipolazioni, questi trick.
Posso chiedere, possono essere nel primo sketch, possono essere considerate le due persone distinte come due personalità invece di una stessa persona, o devono essere viste per forza?
Is it in the first place that you can see that the two guys are like the same guy actually? So one person in two, or is it like strictly two individuals?
Well, do you have any opinions about that? You and I've spoken a lot. Whether they could be seen as the same person.
Same person
Same
in the
person,
first
or
one.
like
Yeah.
totally
Opposite sides of the same person.
Yeah. I
Due
never thought of
personalità
that.
opposte.
Yeah.
Sì, lui dice di sì.
Yeah, I think that's possible. Yeah. It's not something that we talked a lot about.
Non è qualcosa di cui ne abbiamo parlato molto dopo.
But me and Ross are from the same town in Scotland, so
Ma noi siamo della stessa
Possibility.
città in Scozia, dunque.
Yeah, but you have very different personalities, the two characters,
yeah. But I think
different principles. But you compromise, which is interesting. I think that
yeah.
they can come together because they have to compromise to
Due
survive.
caratteri differenti che però appunto devono trovare un compromesso poi alla fine.
And I find that really interesting that they both end up doing exactly the same thing,
Ed è
regardless of how they
interessante
justify it
che
to themselves or to each other. They end up in the same situation. They end up handcuffed together. Like there's that inevitability of like.
That's what brings me to think.
Yeah.
The same person.
Yeah.
Translate that? Or?
No.
It was good.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for
very
staying.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope your studies go well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if they ever ask you to do post-show discussions when you're a director, say no. I'm just joking. It's lovely. It's wonderful.